Well, good morning, guys. Hi, my name's Jake. I am going to be training you guys on, sounds like a handful of things pretty briefly, just kind of like an intro type thing to Flex here. Angela's out this week, so I am her backup. So apologies if I don't give you the grand experience that she's able to give, but I'll do my best. Um, are we expecting any more folks, or is it on the
This
screen
this is
here?
pretty much it for our group.
Is it?
So
Okay,
yeah.
sweet. All right, cool. Then we will not waste any time here. So, again, my name's Jake. Feel free to pause, raise your hand, whatever. I can see you guys. If you have any questions, stop me. If you want me to repeat anything. It's still pretty early, so I'm still kind of waking up, so I might be a little slow, or I might be really fast, so I apologize. Um, but it looks like the agenda today is focusing on searching. That's going to be my primary focus because that's something I feel you guys will be using on the daily is searching. And then, of course, like contact management, maybe some portal stuff. But also it looks like some side menu things like align showings, CMA, stuff like that. So, in my opinion, though, I feel like searching is kind of like the meat and potatoes, I guess, of the system. So once you feel comfortable with that, then everything else kind of just comes second nature. So we'll focus on that for the most part. Um, if anyone wants to follow along, feel free to. Like I said, if I'm doing something you're trying to follow along, raise your hand. Just say, hey, hang on a second. I'll be happy to hold on. But um, yeah, let's just jump into it then. So, as real estate agents, members of the MLS, you guys will obviously be taking on clients. And so the MLS offers a nifty tool called contact management where you can kind of store all of those clients of yours. So let me go ahead and share my screen here and then we will get started there. Share screen two here. All right. Cool. All right. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Cool. Okay, so here we are on the Flex dashboard. So whenever you guys log in for the data of your met.flexmls.com accounts, this is typically what you'll see. There's a setting inside that you can always change it to take you right to a search, but we won't touch on that today. But generally, this will be the first thing you see when you log into Flex. So from here, up in the left-hand corner, we've got our main menu. So when you click on this guy, you'll get the whole drop-down list of everything we have to offer here in the Flex system. So, and you'll notice some things have stars next to them. Pretty intuitive. If you just hover your mouse over any one of these and you see that little silhouette of the star and you click on it to highlight it, it's going to ask you, or do you want to update your menu? Yes, make the change. And what it does is it just throws it across the top here for you, just as like a convenient favorites type bar in case you find yourself using the same thing on the daily. So like quick search, for example, might be one you use a lot, or contact management, even ad change, like adding listings, stuff like that. So I mentioned before we offer a cool place called contact management, which is where you can go to store all of your clients. So we're going to start there and then just kind of work our way through that and into searching and stuff like that. So from the menu, if we go to contact management here we are taken to our contact management screen. So where we can add new contacts, manage existing ones, remove existing ones. You can even print like mailing labels and stuff like that. But again, we're kind of limited on time, so we'll just kind of go through the real basic stuff here. So to add a new contact, you can either utilize our quick add feature, which is a first name, last name, email, excuse me, turn a portal on or off, and then add them. Otherwise, up here in the right, this add contact, that's where you can go to add a contact, but with additional information. So, for example, if you wanted to add like their address or their phone number, stuff like that, you can do all of that up here from the little add contact button up in the right-hand corner there. And when you're adding a new contact, the only bits of info you really need are a name and an email address. Anything outside of that is just kind of useful to have, but it's not necessary. So if you were setting up a contact and you wanted to fill out their name and you weren't sure if you should fill out, this full name field or this secondary first, middle, last name, it doesn't actually hurt to fill out both. And the reason I say that is because first off, this first one is required. It's like a display name. But the second one is useful if like down the road you wanted to print out, say, like mailing labels or something for your clients, you could organize them by first name first or last name first. So that's why I say, if it takes an extra second, just fill out maybe the first and last name like in there. So for this example, if I just fill out a John Doe, I would just do first name John, last name Doe. Don't worry about middle name. And then anything else you want to fill out, you are more than welcome to. You can also create a portal down here as well, like you were able to over here. But that's not the only place you can go to create a portal. And I've mentioned the word portal a few times now, so I should probably kind of explain what that is. In a real nutshell definition of it, a portal is an online bank account for your clients, just real estate, obviously. It's just a place they can go, like a website. They set up a username, password, all that stuff, and they can just log into it anytime and see listings that have been sent to them by you, or just simply match their search criteria. So, if there's time towards the end of this session, I'll kind of touch more on it because it is pretty cool to have for your clients. But just if we don't get to it, that's essentially what it is an online bank account for your clients. So, name, email address, I'll just call this John Doe at MLS.com for example's sake, and then I'll add the contact. Now, that obviously is not a real email address, and we don't obviously have a system to tell you if it's a real email address or not. But down the road, if you did happen to put like a typo in there, or if they gave you an incorrect email address, you will eventually see some red flags pop up saying like, hey, this isn't deliverable, stuff like that. And it's typically all found on this first contact card here. So right now there's not a lot going on because we haven't really done anything with John Doe. But as we go through it and start setting him up on searches, maybe automatic emails, and if I try emailing this and it's undeliverable, it will eventually tell me it bounced. So that's usually the sign that says, hey, you gotta double check that email address. So setting up the contact is very straightforward. You just come to contact management, add the contact, fill out a name and email, you're done. So then from there, you can jump into setting them up on a search. And that is all done obviously through searches and subscriptions. And in case you're wondering, subscriptions is AKA automatic emails, automatic updates, stuff like that. So from here, setting up the search, we just come down to this little add button underneath the searches box. And then we do get prompted to attach a save search if we have any, but if we don't, we'll just click create new quick search, or you'll just be taken to this screen directly. So this is going to be probably a real popular screen for you guys as agents. You'll be creating searches for clients. You'll be probably creating searches for comparable properties. Maybe you took on a listing and you're going to be putting it up for sale and you want to see, how other properties like that have sold for or what they might be going for. So um, for this example's sake, I'm going to kind of keep it vague, pretend like we're setting up that search for the client and then just kind of touch on some things as we go. So right off the bat, we're looking at a search for commercial industrial. The reason I see that and why you might not see that if you're following along is because this is just the last property type I used when I was performing a search. So to change that, you just click on the big header up here in the left, and then you can change it to whatever the property type is that you're searching for. So 9 times out of 10, you're probably gonna be searching on this first one, single family. But if your client ever says, hey, I'm in the market for a duplex, that's a two family, or maybe I'm looking for a 3 unit or a 4 unit, that's a multifamily. Um, I'm looking for land to build on, vacant land, condo. So we do offer all sorts of different property types. And then, of course, within them are probably going to be some more like subcategories, depending what you're looking for. But if you're looking just for your run-of-the-mill residential style house, that's going to be single family here. And then once you choose your property class, that's when you start plugging in different search details. So by default, it keeps it to just active status for you. So clicking on any one of these little detail fields will expand it for you, and then you can, manipulate it from there. So by default, it stays active, but you could also search on delayed, which is like our coming soon status. So it's going to be on the market, but there's a slight delay. Maybe the sellers are just prepping it or what have you, but they needed to get it into the MLS due to the contract date. Pending, it's waiting to be closed basically. Sold means it's closed, expired, withdrawn. So. You are more than welcome to search on multiple statuses in a list like this, depending what machine you're on. If you're on a like a Dell computer, whatever, hold on that control key and then just click on whatever else you want. If you're on a Mac, you hold on the command key and it works just the same. Hold it down, click on whatever you want. Otherwise, if you want to search on everything, you can just do the old-fashioned hold the shift key and then click on everything there. But for this example, I'll try to keep it as close to as what I would imagine a real estate agent will be searching on. Active and delayed. That's pretty common. Close that back up because, pardon me, but I'm OCD when it comes to this stuff, and this just gives me some anxiety once I start seeing it kind of expand all like that. So I'm going to be closing these as I go. But if you want me to leave them open because you want to see what's available, feel free to ask me. I'll suck it up. Another cool field that we have is contingent. So contingent means accepted with offer. So like, let's say you have a property for sale and you got it, someone offered you, something for it and you accepted the offer, but there's some contingencies involved, like, if it passes inspection or whatever the case might be, you know more about that than I do. So you will see those active with offers in your search results. There's usually like a little red C next to them. And I'll show you what those look like in a second. But for the sake of looking out for your client, let's just say, you don't want your clients seeing those properties that have accepted offers on them because you want them to buy a house. You don't want them to see houses that already have accepted offers on them and, potentially miss out or whatever the case may be. So you can totally exclude those if you don't want your client to even be bothered with those. It's a 3-click step. It's a very tedious 3-click step because this one click can be missed pretty easily. So the first click is just check marking the box because we want to include it, right? The second click is the tedious one. So this is where we click the little word of here and we make it say not of. So again, the second click is clicking on this little word of, making it say not of because we want to exclude it. And then the final click is just opening up this drop down and selecting with offer. So if your string reads contingent, not of, with offer, you're golden. That means you will not be seeing any of those active with offer properties, just the straight active ones that are ready to be, given offers, stuff like that. And then just moving down the line, you can plug in your counties, your municipalities. I recommend putting in counties first and then municipalities only because Wisconsin does have some of those duplicate municipalities. So if you don't specify which county you're searching for that municipality within, you might get results for, polar opposite ends of the state, depending where you're looking. So just a good habit to make sure you plug in your county first before you plug in your municipality. Plus, if, depending where you're searching, whatever county you plug in, so let's just say Waukesha, for example, then it's only going to give you Waukesha municipalities, which makes it a little bit easier to find whichever one you're looking for. Um, You can also narrow it down by zip code. You can narrow it down by map shapes. We offer different map shapes for the map here. You can do property locate address, stuff like that. All sorts of different ways that you can hone in on your area. Just keep in mind as you're plugging in more and more criteria, the less and less your results are going to become because it's trying to fit it all into your search field here. So if your goal, let's say, is to search within Brookfield of Waukesha County here, but you also have a client that says, but your client also says, I also want to see what's in this particular zip code out in left field. What's going to happen is your search is going to be looking for properties within this county, within this municipality that have this zip code. And of course, that's not going to give you any results because they're different sides. So just keep that in mind when you're plugging things in. You may have to play around with it a little bit. There's really no right or wrong way to create your search, but you may, depending what your client's asking for, end up having to create another separate search just to appease them. But typically, you can get away with fitting it all into one. You just got to figure out how to manipulate it, whether that be like plugging in all the zip codes versus county and municipality. That way, it knows, oh, okay, we're going to search in all five of these different zip codes and call it a day. Cool. Or if you end up just simply using a map shape to cover those areas, that works too. So just always keep an eye, I say, on the results number up here because this can drop pretty fast depending what you plug in. Um, List price, sold price, these are both handy depending which status you're searching on. List price, if you want to see what things have been listed for, this will obviously come in handy for active and delayed status. Sold price really comes in handy only if you're searching on sold properties, obviously. Beds and baths. Um, the general rule of thumb, at least I say, is make sure your client is dead set on the amount of things they want to search on. Because if they tell you, hey, I'm looking for a three-bedroom home, and you plug in 3 to 3, that means you're looking for properties only with 3 bedrooms. Whereas maybe they're open-minded, you would hope they're open-minded at least, to more, but for the price of three, if that makes sense. So, like, if they say, oh, I'm looking for 3 beds, but they don't really give you a max, you could always leave it as like this 3 to nothing, which means it's going to give you three or more. So, and as long as it's within their price range, maybe they'll want to check it out. But always just make sure, like, hey, are you sure you only want to find 3 properties? Because I might be able to get you 4 for the same price. But decimal points typically do not work in fields like list price and bedrooms. We usually recommend just keeping it as a whole number, no commas, no dollar signs, nothing like that. The only time decimal points do work are for baths and garage spaces because of those halves. So, like, if you're looking for at least a 1.5 bath, 1.5 would be what you put in. Same thing with garage. If you're looking for at least a 2.5 car garage, 2.5 would work. Okay. Garage type, body of water, subdivision. So the last thing I really want to stress on as far as search details go are fields like this, where it's got body of water, subdivision, things that require basically just text, so names. Because whatever you type in these fields, you're at the mercy of whatever the other agents, if other agents typed or spelt them the same way. So, for example, if I'm looking for properties on Lac LaBelle, right? Oops, Lac LaBelle. I'm only going to find properties where the listing agent wrote it exactly like that. Lac space, la space, bell. And there are agents who usually, will be in a pinch for time, forget to put a space in something, or maybe forget a letter. In that case, I'll miss out on those specific ones, which stinks. So there is a trick that you can use to kind of avoid missing out on all that type of stuff. It's called a wildcard search. So if you're not familiar with what a wildcard search is, you basically just find like a common denominator of the spelling of a word, and use that to your advantage. So the way we do that is first figure out, we'll use Lac LaBelle, for example. You really can't spell Lac LaBelle with at least the bell portion of it because some people might call it Lake LaBelle. So you don't want to try just Lac. But Bell, maybe Bel or Bell might be a good place to start. So for a wildcard search to work, all you do is start with an asterisk. So Shift 8 to get that little star asterisk icon. Plug in the common denominator spelling. For this case, we'll just do Bell. And then you cap it off with one more asterisk. So again, wildcard searching is finding that common denominator of spelling of a word and then using that with an asterisk, spelling it out, asterisk. And you can do as many of these as you want in your search bar. All you have to do is just break them apart with a comma, no spaces. So if I wanted to search for another body of water, with the same wildcard search method, I could totally do that. Just do comma, no space, asterisk, and then keep on going. Okay. So what this does though is it searches for any listing where in that body of water field the word bell is, whether it's on its own, whether it's in the spelling of a word, that wildcard search is going to be a lot more advantageous than me trying to spell out the different versions of Lac LaBelle, Lake LaBelle, space versus no space. This sort of just gives me everything. Now, will you get more than what you bargained for? You might. There is a good chance that you might. So just be aware of that, but at least you're not going to be missing out. So again, wildcard search, asterisk, common spelling of a word, asterisk. Okay. I feel like I'm rushing because of the short amount of time, but does anyone have any questions or want me to repeat anything?
I think we're good.
All right, sweet. Um, let's see what else we got here. That's kind of nice to know. If you don't see any search details on this left-hand side that you think might be useful, you can always come down to this add a field button in the left, and then this gives you all the rest, including what's already over here. So it's everything. So if you're like, oh, I'm not seeing, bungalows or ranch or whatever the case might be, you can always come down to add a field and either just scroll through and pick and choose what you want to click on and add over here, or you can use the search bar to find what you're looking for. Okay. Trying to think of this. Oh, there is one detail I just want to point out in this side of it that's probably like a last ditch effort detail. It's called public remarks. So if you're utilizing everything you can think of and you're just not getting what you feel like you should be getting, the fail-safe kind of last-ditch effort I recommend using is public remarks. And then using that wildcard search or just plugging in your keywords, whatever, into this little search tool. And the reason I say that is because if you're using the search details and you're not getting results, maybe the listing agent wrote about it in the public remarks. So they might have forgotten to check mark the box or something like that for the listing. But maybe they wrote about it. So you could always find those keywords, just like we did with body of water. It searches for any property where the body of water field had this bell in it. You could do the same thing with public remarks. So, and chances are that the listing agents are writing a lot, hopefully, about the listing in that public remarks field. So hopefully that's going to work out for you. Um, the example I always use is there was a time when an agent was searching for a property that was or could be used as a church, and the commercial industrial property class offers church as a search field. But nobody ever check marked it because maybe it wasn't used as a church at the time, but people wrote about it being used or having windows like a church. So public remarks, I had them just type in the word church and they got what they were looking for. So that's kind of just, like I said, the last ditch effort method in case you're not having any luck. All right, so that's pretty much it as far as searching itself goes. Obviously, play around with it, learn about different search details. From here, though, let's just pretend like, okay, I've plugged everything in. I've got what I've needed for my client. I can go ahead and view the results and just make sure they look like properties my client would like. So you would use this time on the search results screen to just sort of make sure they look good to you. Um, Real quick, I just want to show you guys what that active with offer looks like, just so you are familiar with it in case you run into it. So here's that little red C I was telling you about. So if you ever come across any listings that say active but have the little red C, that means they're contingent. They have accepted offers on them, but they're still available for showings. So as far as like being able to, you know, counter offer or whatever that side of it goes, I'm not going to tell you what to do because that's not my thing. But you are able to at least schedule a showing since it is active. So do what you will with that. But if you want to exclude those from your client being able to see those, just go to edit search, contingent not of with offer, and then you're set. Okay. Up here on the right, we've got some tools, share, email, save, all that stuff. CMA, I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit here. But then we also have some like sub tools. So edit search in case you want to go back and make any changes to your search criteria. List, which is what we're on. So just like a list view. Detail. So this gives us a look at the report sheet as well as all sorts of different other items like history, tax records, mortgage info, any documents that are public on file, showing service, um, search comparables, stuff like that. Photos, so you can get a good look at the property. Map to get an idea of where on the property this property falls. And then stats. So stats, isn't exactly a CMA, a comparative market analysis, but it's pretty close. So it just takes all the results you have here in front of you and plugs them into just a quick, brief report for you. So days on market. And actually, you know what? It is kind of nice because it gives you days on market stats, which a typical CMA it does give, but it's a little bit more convenient here since it's right in front of you. Anyway. So results page is a great auditing tool to make sure that they look like listings that your client would like to see and receive updates for. So pretending like you are good to go here, we want to save this search so that we don't have to come back and recreate it again, right? So from here up in the right, we would click on this save button. And then save type is a new search or existing. It's a new one. So typically what I recommend agents do is give it a title that is easy to determine what kind of search it is because you might find yourself creating more than one search for your client and you don't want to name it like John Doe 1 and then the next one John Doe 2 because at a glance there's no telling what that entails. So, and especially if you're going to be searching on single family and then maybe like condominiums as well. So what I always recommend is maybe giving it a name with the client's name and then maybe the property type. So in this case, we'll just call this one Doe single family. Or even like area if you're searching on different areas. So whatever's easiest for you to remember. The contact should already populate it because we're working on behalf of them. But in case if we weren't, we would just choose either existing contact or a new contact and add them here, or none if we just wanted to simply save this for ourselves. And then down here, we would go to save and add subscription, which is kind of the last ticket piece to solidify my client to receive those updates. So from here, the only thing I need to make sure of is selected contacts is checked because that means John Doe here is my selected contact. And then what type of subscription schedule do I want him to be on? Weekly, which sends out one email per day. Or I'm sorry, one email per week on the days selected. So it's kind of looked at like a daily schedule, but if no new activity happens on Tuesday, they're not going to get an email, if that makes sense. Monthly sends one email out per month on whatever date selected. Recommended to keep it within the first half of the month just because of February being as weird as it is. ASAP, that is our fastest schedule. So I apologize, it does not go in chronological order of like the slowest to fastest, but ASAP is our fastest. That is as soon as something comes up in MLS. It's like within a 10-minute time frame. And then continuous is like a watered down version of ASAP. There's 4 designated times per day for emails to go out with continuous. So if you've got a client with a search that's somewhat vague but somewhat detailed, and you think ASAP just might bombard them with emails, continuous might be a good alternative. It's like morning, afternoon, evening, and then overnight are the 4 general times. They're within a couple hours of each other, so there's not like a dead set, like this is going on at 6, this is going on at 7. So just generally speaking, morning, afternoon, evening, and overnight is when those emails go out. And then down here is the email that goes out with each of those subscription listings. So keep this vague as well, I say, like subject, here's some MLS listings or new listings. And then body, maybe just say something like contact me with questions or something along those lines. You don't want to talk about a specific date or a specific holiday or specifics if it's come and gone already, because they're going to see this every time it comes over. And then once you're done, you just save. So then from here, you could email them the existing listings just so they're on top of it all. And then anything new from this point forward, they should receive. The key thing to remember though is if you're working with a brand new client that you've never worked with before and you just added them to your account, they're going to receive what's called an opt-in request. So basically, they'll receive an email and it just asks them to confirm, hey, do you wish to receive updates? They click yes, they're good to go for life essentially. Excuse me. And if you set them up on any new searches after they've already opted in, they're automatically opted into those new searches right away. Sorry, what was there a question?
No, everything shut off for a second and turned back on, so I had it
Oh,
reconnected.
sorry about that. Where did I lose you guys? Do you remember what I was saying last by chance?
Uh, you honestly only cut out for like 5 or so seconds.
All right, sounds good. Then I will just keep her moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, so any new client you have, they'll opt in one time and then they'll be good to go for life, essentially. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm trying to like get a flow here. So we'll touch on CMAs in just a second here. I want to jump back into contact management and cap off that lesson before we jump into CMAs. So I'm going to turn to contact management here. So here's what like a completed contact would look like. So you've got the search showing up over here on the left-hand side. You've got the subscription over here on the right. And at a quick glance, we do see in parentheses pending next to my client's email. That just tells me that they haven't opted in yet. So, and we can also see that here as well on the contact details side. So once they opt in, this status will go from pending to confirmed. So let's say a couple days go by, I still see them in pending status. I may reach out to them and just ask them, hey, did you receive that opt-in request? If they say no and it's not like in their junk or spam folder, first thing I'll maybe double check with them is did I spell their email correctly? If so, maybe just go ahead and utilize this send opt-in request link that you guys have access to. Because what that does is just sends them a brand new opt-in request email. So it shows up fresh in their inbox. Um, this will also be the place where I mentioned before, if there is like an undeliverable reason, like a typo or whatever the case might be, and the client's email bounces the Flex email, you would see here bounced in parentheses. Unfortunately, at this time, there's no notification that lets you, the agent, know that it bounced. We are working on getting that implemented, hopefully, to make it a little more convenient. But for the time being, if your client ever says, hey, I'm not receiving emails, first thing I always look for is a bounce message next to their status, because if that's there, then okay, I need to contact the MLS so that they can remove that bounce. Um, there is no tool that the agents have access to remove the bounce. You can either give us a shout and we can remove it in like a couple seconds, or you can have the client do their best and reach out to their email provider and ask that they don't block things coming from FlexMail. That second method can usually take a little while to finalize. So I recommend if you're able to reach out to the MLS, just give us an email, give us a call. We can certainly remove that very quick for you. And then we can even send a new opt-in request too right away if you need to. All right. That is pretty much the basics on setting up contact searches subscriptions, something I feel you guys will be using very, very often. The last thing I want to touch on as far as contacts go is the tools down here. These are pretty sensitive tools, so be careful when you click on them. Edit contact is just where you go to edit your contact's information, and then you save your changes when you're done. Remove is where you go to remove your contact. So there's two different remove buttons. This remove here is just in relevance to your search for them. So if they ever say like, hey, I need to be done with my search for now, you could always just remove the search and be good to go. Still leaving their contact file the way it is and not worry about getting rid of it. But this remove, this is where you go to remove the contact entirely from your account. So just be careful clicking on that. There are a few like, are you sure's that pop up before it finalizes it, which is nice. But again, this bottom remove is to where you go to get rid of your contact entirely. And unfortunately, there is no retrieving the contact once it's been removed, so we would have to re-add it from scratch. Deactivate just simply like pauses your client in case you're going to go out of town, or maybe you're going on leave, or maybe they're just done searching for things right now for a temporary time. You can just deactivate them. That way they pause their subscriptions, maybe pause their portal access, and then you can always reactivate them pretty easily down the road. And then transfer in case maybe you're not going to be working with this client anymore and you need to transfer them to your colleague. This works only for within the same office as you. You can just transfer the client over to that person if you need to. Okay. All right. Any questions at all about contacts and searches or subscriptions before I jump into some other things here real quick? Cool.
I don't think so.
Awesome. All right, so that's a pretty popular one that you guys will be using, I'm sure. The next one is probably going to be searching for comparables or just searching in general. So, trying to think best like an agent, you have a property that you're going to be listing for sale. Before you just throw it on the MLS for whatever price you think is best, you might want to do some research and see what other properties have sold for like that one. That would be considered a CMA, comparative market analysis. But when you really break it down, it's just a quick search. So a lot of times agents will put CMAs on its own pedestal, thinking it's a whole different ball game. It's not. All you're doing is a search for comparables and then plugging those results into a CMA, which is basically just a nice looking booklet. So again, change your property class to whatever the property class is that you're listing or maybe selling. You want to make sure you get it all right there. And then try your best to plug in as close to details as you can to your, I call it the subject property, the one that you're comparing to. So let's say I've got a property that I'm going to be selling pretty soon here. I may want to see what has sold that is like it, but maybe also what's on the market that's like it, just to see if there's any trend differences or anything like that. So when I do actives and solds, sold date automatically goes back 1 year. So if you're okay with that, great. If not, you could always change this, whether it be a certain amount of days back. You can click on this days link to change it to months, change it to years, back to days. Or we've got a little double arrow icon, we'll call it. When you click on this, this changes the format. So you could go back to a specific date if you'd rather do that way. But either way, it goes back 1 year for you. And then same as how you were performing searches before, plug in your county, plug in your municipality. Maybe you'll find yourself doing more of like a radius around your subject property to see what other listings like and have sold in that area. But just for general purposes, make sure you get the area as honed in as you can. So I'll use Milwaukee for this example. Maybe the property I'm selling is within South Milwaukee and it's got, let's say, 3 bedrooms. So I may, for starters, narrow it down to just only 3 bedroom properties, just to get as close to apples as I can. And then let's say it's got 1.5 baths. I might only do 1.5 baths. So right now I'm working with 44, and you could always keep going until you maybe only have a couple of results, because I feel like 44 might be a bit overwhelming to kind of sift through. But just keep that results number in mind. Maybe you're plugging in the amount of garage spaces it has, and then all of a sudden, boom, it drops to like 2 results. Then you may want to come back and just toggle something here, like maybe 3 to 4 bedrooms or 1.5 to 2 car garage, just to kind of get a little bit extra results to play with, if that all makes sense. Um, you can use the price range if you want to. In my mind, the goal is to see what other properties have sold for and what they're going for that fit the bill for these types of fields. So I may leave those blank just for starters. But the whole point is just to get a list of results that you can work with, essentially. So here we've got a list of results. I see one active, the rest are solds, aka closed. So from here, again, utilize this to audit these listings, make sure they look similar to the property you're trying to sell, list, whatever. And if they don't, maybe you find yourself only check marking a couple and only using those guys versus all 16. That's perfectly fine too. Again, no right or wrong way to do really anything in this system as far as searching goes. It's really up to you and what you want to include. But just for example's sake, we'll say I want to use all 16 of these results for my CMA because they look just like the one I'm trying to list, and I want to get an idea of what I should sell it for, basically. Um, a lot of times, agents actually might be done at this point. Maybe from here, they can just get a general idea of like, okay, a lot of them are going for about 360, mid 300s. Like, okay, that's good enough for me. I can work with that. But if you want to go that extra step and plug it all into a CMA, you just come up here to the right-hand corner and click on CMA. And then you can use all results or just use selected if you happen to click on any. We'll just use all results for this one. And then we offer we offer technically two different types of CMAs. Full and quick are one and the same. Full CMA just starts you at the beginning of that booklet I mentioned. Quick CMA starts you at the end of the booklet, and you just kind of plug things in as you see fit. Whereas statistical CMA, this is its own category. It's strictly numbers. So the full and quick CMA kind of turn your results into a book. You've got a page for maybe a list recommendation. You've got a page for uh, comparables. You've got a page for your subject, all that stuff. Whereas statistical CMA, it's all numbers. So if you're a numbers guru and you just want to see like what the average lows and highs are for a certain area, you would want to go with that statistical CMA. But just show you what a full CMA looks like. We'll click next. Fill out the pages as they are needed. Fill out a title page if you need to. Subject property page. So this is good if you have that subject property in mind that you're comparing to, and you want your client to see that, like, hey, this is your property that we're going to be listing. Here's all the details for it. And then down the line here, you'll see the comparables and stuff like that. So you fill out the information about the subject property. There is a nifty little auto-populate tool that we have. So you just plug in the MLS number of that existing listing if you have it. If if the property you're listing, your subject property, if it hasn't been listed before, then unfortunately this won't be useful to you because we need an MLS number. So you just manually fill this out. Comparables, just move on along here. Here's all those 16 results I was working with. So this is kind of like a last place for you to go to sort of just uncheck mark things if you don't want to include them. Any adjustments, if you need to make any adjustments to any of the comparables. A summary just to kind of get a brief overview for numbers, sort of like what the statistical CMA has to offer, just in a quicker format. Price recommendation, so it's taking the low and the high of your comparables and giving you like that sweet spot middle number. So kind of like what I mentioned before, you can just kind of look through the list of results and be like, okay, it looks like mid 300s. We can work with that. And then lastly, your finish page, which is where you go to kind of make it all dolled up. So include whatever you want to include on the CMA, exclude whatever you want to exclude, give it a color scheme if you want to. Some listing report sheets, you can include those if you want to. But if you want to just get a quick view of what it looks like, you just click view down here. And then this is what a basically a completed CMA will look like. Obviously, it's not as filled out with numbers as your standard CMA would have, but just for example's sake, this is what a typical CMA would look like. So it's kind of just a big booklet here. Here's your recommendations, your price analyses, summaries, individual report sheets. So you could just take this and hand it to your client, be like, hey, this is the research I did based on the comparables I used. Here's what a recommended price would be. I think at the end of the day, all your client would really care about is the price recommendation because they want to get the most bang for their buck. But if they want to see the research you did, you could totally prove it with this here. So. You can always print this CMA if you need to, save it to your Flex account. If you wanted to create this into a PDF and then email it as an attachment, we'd recommend using the print to PDF method through your standard printer. Or you could email it straight from Flex to your client that way too, if you'd like. And then they get a link, they can open it up and take a look at all that stuff. Okay. If you save it, I'll show you where to find that. We'll just call this John Doe again. just in case if you save it and want to come back to it later on. Same thing with searches. I'll show you that too. So to find your saved CMAs, you just come to the menu, hit CMA, and then it should show up right in there for you. So last modified today, so then you know, yep, that's the one. I can come in here, I can go back to editing it, I can view it, I can print it, rename it, or I could remove it. You could also create a brand new CMA from here as well. I don't personally like going this method because I prefer the method of just creating the search first, finding my comparables because that does take the brunt of the time. But if you create a new CMA using this button here, it starts you kind of like where a full CMA begins, and then you just sort of work your way through it. And then from here, find comps is where you go to create your search. A little backwards, in my opinion, but it's definitely there. And if you're comfortable with it, feel free. It's all about muscle memory. But again, my preferred method is starting in quick search and then working your way through it that way. The other thing I wanted to point out was back to when we were talking about save searches for clients, and how you don't have to attach those searches to clients. Maybe you just save the search for your own personal use. You will always be able to find those under saved search here. And actually, whether they're attached to a client or not, all of your saved searches are going to live here. So if you made a search yesterday or the day before, whatever, and you remember saving it, but you don't remember if you attached to a client, you look at your client and it's like, oh shoot, it's not there. It's most likely going to be in here anyway, or maybe under your draft searches. You'll find it there as well. If you forgot to save it, it should be there. But all of your saved searches, whether attached to a client or not, will be under saved searches here. Okay. All right. That is CMA. Does anybody have any questions on CMA or would like me to kind of touch on anything like that again? Cool.
I don't think so.
Awesome. All right. So then looking at the agenda here, the last thing I want to touch on in Flex's side is the portal, and then I'll kind of go over Align showings as well. So portal, I mentioned before, is that online bank account that you can set up for your client. Another pretty popular one that you may not use as often as a search and subscription, but I feel like it's up there. So just to simply set up that portal for your client, if you go into your contact management and then select your contact, if you forgot to click on either the portal checkbox back here, or when you were setting them up under add contact, we had that portal button there, you are not out of luck. You can always come to this portal button here on their contact card, and then you can click on invite to portal. Well, first off, got to turn it on. Sorry. Turn the portal on just to give them access, and then you invite them to that portal. So by turning it on, that says, okay, we are able to send them a registration link, which is this invite button here. So what it does is it'll shoot an email to your client's primary email. That's the first email on file for your client. We consider it the primary, also the username. So it sends that client's primary email a registration link with some tutorials on how to utilize it. And then from there, they go to the page that it takes them to, fill out a password because it should autofill their username as their email. And then essentially they're good to go. There's an app that they can download that it talks about, a website link that they can go to, and then they can just view everything that matches the criteria you set them up on. Um, there's like a news feed where it shows like all the newest stuff that was sent to them. Depending what kind of portal you have them set up on, they should be also able to create their own searches. So, and what I mean by depending which portal you have them set up on, at Metro, we have two different versions of portal. One we call Classic because that's the first one that we always offered. And basically, the way that one works is when your client is on their portal. Let's see if Angela has a portal here. She does. When your client is on the portal, it looks a lot like it does in Flex for you guys. So here's what a classic portal looks like for a client. They see very, very similar things to what you see in Flex. They just don't have the ability to search. They only have the ability to see whatever it is you set them up on. Okay? So, but all the navigation functionality is the same as what you have access to in Flex. This is the classic portal. Okay. Now, the other portal option we offer is called Portal 2.0. That is a more mobile style looking portal. So when a client is on their Portal 2.0 on the desktop, it looks the best way I can describe it is kind of looks like Zillow. You got a big map, you got all your listings on the left. When you click on a listing, it pulls it up in front of you. You got all the details and stuff. It's very standard format. It's not unique with like different reports and stuff like that. That method offers the client searchability access on the desktop. So again, classic portal is just like what you guys see in Flex, no searching on the desktop. Portal 2.0 is more new age looking, I guess, offers the client searching, cannot save the search. I should probably point that out. They cannot save the search. They can only do their own little one-off searches. And if they like what they see, then they reach out to you as their agent, say, hey, I did this search on my own. I really like the results. Can you set me up on that? Kind of keeps that relationship tight like that. Now, flipping the script from desktop to mobile, no matter what they have, whether it's Classic Portal or Portal 2.0, if they're on their phones, it defaults to Portal 2.0. So again, if they're on their phones and they're on their portals, it defaults to 2.0. So whether they're set up for Classic Portal on the desktop or not, if they're on their phones, they can still perform their own searches. So that's kind of, I like to point that out to agents if they ever call in and say like, hey, I got my client set up on a classic portal. They shouldn't be able to do their own searches, but they're telling me they did. How so? They probably went to their phones or mobile devices and pulled up their portals that way and did a search because it defaults to that 2.0 version. So, um, other than that, that's pretty much the gist of a portal. So again, online bank account. They can go in at any time, see whatever's been sent to them through their subscriptions, see what is currently matching their search criteria. They can perform their own searches depending where they're at on the portal and what device they're using. Um, yeah, last thing I want to touch on as far as portals, subscriptions, searches, all that stuff goes is they do work really well hand in hand, but you don't need one to have the other. So what I mean by that is if I have a client set up with a search attached, or maybe I don't have a search attached at all, what I want to say is maybe they don't have a subscription, like an automatic email going, they can still totally have a portal turned on and be functional because the if I have a search at least attached to the client and they go to their portal, they might not be receiving automatic updates, but they can always go into their portal and see what's new for their search. So if that makes sense, if you don't have a subscription set up for a client, but you do have them set up on a search with a portal, it's still okay. They can still log into their portals anytime they want and view whatever's new activity. The best way I can describe and compare that to a real, like another analogy is like if I'm checking my online bank account to see what my balances are, but I've disabled my monthly notices of telling me like what my balances are, if that makes sense, or my weekly balances if I get notified that way. I'm not getting notifications of what my balances are, but I can always log into my bank account and see what my activity looks like. That's kind of how it can work too here if you don't want to turn on that subscription. All right, I think I've talked enough about searches, subscriptions, and all that stuff. Hopefully, that was pretty straightforward, though, for you guys to work off of. The last thing I want to do with what little time we have is touch on aligned showings. So, accepting showings, scheduling showings, all that stuff. So, scheduling showings is pretty simple. You just pull up a listing in MLS, whether it's through a search, whether it's using this nifty quick launch bar at the top here, whatever the case might be. There will usually be a showing service button here. It'll either say align showings or showing time. That's all dependent upon the listing agent of the property and what they use, but you should always be able to schedule a showing through that link that's usually found up here. This one's not showing up because it's expired, but if you're looking at an active one, usually you'll find a button up here. But when you're in your aligned showings accounts, This is what you would typically see when you first access aligned showings. So you'll see the calendar with any upcoming showings of yours. You can use the filtering tools if you want to filter it down by specific appointment types. Excuse me, your listings or showings you've requested, buyer names if that's something you have. Excuse me, and then by address or by agent. You also have access to creating routes. So like, point A to point B to point C for your showings and stuff like that. You have access to your own listings, to any alerts that you may have received, like showing notifications, requests, stuff like that. Reports, so showing activity. Messages, so communications between selling and showing agents. Contacts, so, you can see who's in your team, buyers, stuff like that. And then you can add a showing. So another place you can go to schedule a showing. But the one I want to focus on, since we only have a couple minutes, is probably the most popular one, and that's My Listings. So this is where you would see any of your own listings, assuming you're using aligned showings, and where you can go to kind of edit them and send broadcast messaging and get reports and stuff like that. So the first thing I notice up here, it says agent with a drop down. So if you're a part of a team, just for example's sake, we'll say Keller Williams that you're with has a team. We'll call it the Keller Williams team. And you are a part of that team and the listings are under that team account. When you're in Flex as yourself, your individual agent account, and you come to align showings and you go to My Listings, you should have a drop down up here that lets you toggle between yourself and that team account. So the reason why that's important is because when those team listings are in the MLS, they're owned by the team, not you individually. So if you need to make changes to that listing in Align Showings and you're not seeing anything here, you'll want to make sure that your team name is selected up here. And then you should be able to see all those at least active listings under that team account that you're a part of. Now, if you are flipped to the team account and you're in the right status and you're not seeing any listings here, then there's a problem. So give us a call. We can take a look to make sure everything's set up right, but we'll get you taken care of. Or maybe you're on the wrong status, or in the one-off scenario, you do see the listings, but you don't have that edit tool. That means you're not added to that listing to be able to edit it. Again, we should be able to help you out with that. Your broker should be able to help you out with that. We can get you taken care of. So we have some tools here. So the first one is the edit tool, the edit listing setup. This just lets us toggle the appointment types, whether it's like a instant approval. So if I schedule a showing for today at 2, it's good to go. I don't need to wait for approval. It's good. Or you can require approval, meaning I schedule a showing for today at 2. It comes to you or maybe your seller and you guys have to approve it. That's what a required approval means. Whether you allow overlapping or not in your appointments, that's completely up to you. And if so, how many overlapping appointments do you allow? Um, Maximum appointment length. So how long do you want people to be there? Any instant messages to go out when approval is given, lockbox combinations, stuff like that to get in. Any arrangements you wish to make, like agent will accompany, seller will accompany, request a call back. Any additional instructions you want to be sent out upon approval. If you want buyer's name to be required, yes or no. This is handy for if once the listing is expired, you are then prompted for 7 days post expiration a buyer's report, so you can download that and get an idea of like who all the buyers were. Advance notices, how long of an advance notice do you need? Like what kind of heads up do you need? And then just some other things like office involvement, which people on your team is allowed to have access to this. Seller tenant, do you want your sellers to have access to being able to approve showings and stuff like that? Any restrictions for the showings? Maybe you're not allowed to take showings between certain times of day. And then just some feedback stuff. All right, we're out of time, so let me just kind of brush over these real quick. You can view any existing showings using this View Showings calendar icon. You can download an activity report to get an idea of how your showings have been going. You can add past showings. Maybe you got this into the system a little too late. You want to add some past showings just for, purposes showing history. You can schedule a showing on behalf of another agent in case they don't have access, in case they're having technical difficulties, whatever the case might be. And then you can merge listings. So this is handy if like you've got two listings, but they're the same property. One is just listed as maybe a two family, the other one is listed as a multifamily, and you don't want to handle two different showing requests because it's the same property. You can merge the listings into one on a line showing side so that you can just handle all the showings under one roof, basically. So that's what merge listings mean. But other than that, oh, and then we do offer one broadcast icon. So in case like if there's a price reduction or you want to get like one last ditch effort message out to everybody that has shown the property, or maybe within your office, you can send out a broadcast message to all of them saying, "Hey, I'm dropping the price. This is happening. Blah blah blah." Whatever you want. All right, guys, that was a new one for me. I never had to condense a whole bunch of different subjects like that into one. It was kind of interesting. It's keeping me sharp. But do you guys have any questions about anything? Need me to go over anything again or repeat anything like that?
I think we're good. Thank you very much. There was a lot
Yeah.
of good information and even I learned some new things. So
All right, cool. I'll before I leave you guys, I just want to end it with if you ever do want to find more in-depth training on anything I covered today, that's all going to be found under our homepage, metromls.com. We have a training section here. You can come into our classes. We do offer one-on-one training. You can also, at your own pace, watch some videos and stuff like that we have. But it should all be categorized pretty neatly for you. So. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I hope this was good. Yeah, reach out to us if you need anything, though, okay?
thank you so much.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good one.